what I mean from this. So this is our project we're working on. Like I said last time, it's very similar to what you do in Illustrator. So you're working with your vector objects. You're placing everything in different frames. That's kind of the big thing for InDesign. Here's another thing. So to create a frame for text, of course we use the type tool. You click and drag, you got a type frame and you can add text inside of it. If I wanted to add a picture, I've got a rectangle frame tool or different other types of shapes. I can click and drag and that'll give me an X, simply meaning I can place a picture inside of that. Be aware that there's another type of shape tool. It's just the regular rectangle tool or whatever shape that you have. And if you click and drag, it looks similar, but in this case it doesn't have any content inside of it as well. It's just kind of I even do this every once in a while. I'll grab the wrong tool, I'll place or make a content folder or frame, and I'll say, oops, I've made a picture frame when I meant to make a text frame, or I've used the rectangle tool when I meant to use another tool. Let me show you the quick way to get around that. You can select any type of frame that you created. Let's say I made a picture frame and I meant to make a text frame. With it selected, you can go up to Object and down to Content, and you can change the intent of the content. In this case, it's meant to be a graphic, a picture. If I wanted to be text, when I choose text, now I get a text frame, and I get my little insertion point that I can change up from there. You can do the same thing for a text frame. So if I've got this, I meant to put a picture into it. The object's content can be changed to another type of content frame and go from there. It's the quickest and easiest way to change something out. Of course, if there's no intent, it'll be unassigned, which is what that is, and you can change it up to anything else that you need. All cool? Real easy. Here's another fun thing that you can do. Whenever I do things like letterheads or newspapers, brochures, I like to see how it's going to be used. In other words, what does it look like when I put text inside of it or pictures inside of it? So if I'm doing a letterhead like this for somebody, I would want to show them, hey, what would it look like if you actually typed out a letter or wrote something or put pictures onto it? So to do this, I need to use what's called dummy text. I just need something to fill in the area with what I have. So let's grab my type tool. I can click and drag. Gives me just a simple type frame. To fill in quickly dummy text, I can go to Type and down to Fill with what's called placeholder text. Same thing. Sometimes it's called Greeking. But what this will do is it'll fill it in with just random Latin words. And it gives you the idea of what it will look like once it's printed. It doesn't have to be anything specific. It's just words on a page. Does that make sense? So there's that. Whoops. Choose my type tool. From here, I can also go into it and start adding and formatting my text. Of course, I need to highlight it to make the changes. In this particular project, you're going to do just a little bit of formatting, so you're changing the font that you need, you change the size of it. All of this can be found up here at the top. And so if I've got my type tool, I can change my font. Come on, open up. There we go. And I can choose and see what kind of fonts would look good and how to work with those. But let's talk about the keyboard shortcuts. If I wanted to change the size of my text, I would have to go up here and either hit the up and down arrow, or I would have to type in specifically the size that I want and hit return to change that up. The keyboard shortcut, if you look on the sheet that I gave you, I can hold down the Command and Shift key and use my open and close brackets, or excuse me, my less than greater than sign. And on the fly, holding down those, I can adjust the size of it very quickly. In other words, I don't have to go to my mouse to add or increase it. Same way for leading. So leading is the amount of space between your lines of text. If I wanted to do that, what's my keyboard shortcut? Option, up and down arrow. Holding down the Option key, I can use my arrows to make it closer together or farther apart. And as I do it, you can see it adjust itself at the very top of the screen. So I'm increasing my leading or decreasing the leading based on what I've chosen from there. Pretty cool? Some other type of keyboard shortcuts that I use a lot have to do with moving around my page. Now, if at the very bottom of your toolbox, you've got a hand tool and you've got a zoom tool. If I choose the zoom tool, y'all have used this before. Of course, I can either click to zoom in or I can click and drag over an area. If I wanted to quickly zoom in and out without selecting my zoom tool, I'll use my black arrow to be selected. Of course, you got your command plus and minus sign. So the command, if I hit minus, will zoom out. Command plus will zoom in, usually to wherever is centered on the screen. If you're zooming around and you've gotten off to some specific place and you don't know where you're at, I always hit command 0. That brings everything back into center screen on the focus. So 0, plus, and minus are ones that I use a lot. The other tool you can use is your hand tool. The hand tool, rather than scrolling with your mouse or even getting the little scroll bars down at the bottom, allows me to click and drag around my document and move exactly where I need to be. So if I wanted to go quickly into this area, use my hand tool, I can zoom in and then grab it down from there. If I had another tool selected, so if I got my selection tool, to quickly get my hand tool, hold down your option key, watch my cursor change. Oops, excuse me. Spacebar. Spacebar key is what you want. Converts it to the hand. Now I can quickly move exactly where I need it to be. When I let go of the spacebar, it comes back up from here. The only exception to this is if I have my type tool. So if I have my type tool, specifically if I am working with type inside of here, what would happen if I hit my spacebar? Make a bunch of spaces. It's not giving me my hand tool. This is where you hold down your option, and that gives you your hand tool. So that's the only kind of exception to this. If you're working in type, you need to hold down your option to bring up the hand tool to be able to move around to whichever page you're working with. So you'll see me use both of those a lot for these as well. In Photoshop, they have their own set of keyboard shortcuts that you can use for choosing tools and adjusting sizes for brushes, those kinds of things. Illustrator has the same thing for each one of those. But knowing these aren't the kind of things that you have to know, but it'll make you work a whole lot faster and you'll be a little bit more intuitive when working with that. All cool? Okay. Remember, for this one, once you've finished it up, you don't have to put on dummy text, but we will go to File and Print. Let me show you the print dialog box, simply because you don't get to do it so often. The first thing you always have to do, be sure you got the color printer selected. That's the most important one. Won't be able to print tabloid on black and white. To change the paper size for this one, we won't have to go to Page Setup or Printer. Usually under the Setup key, this is where we can change it to a larger paper size. So there's my tabloid. And from here you can choose the page position. I usually like to print it nice and centered on my page to see with that. They will ask you to turn on your crop marks and your printer's marks. So that's under Marks and Bleeds, and you'll turn on the appropriate things when printing for this one as well. Once you're finished, go to Print, and it'll bring up your paper cut printer eventually on there, and you'll print it from that. All cool? Other than that, that's all we're doing for today. So I'm going to turn it over to y'all and I'll let y'all get started.